Here to discuss what is terroir and how it affects the genetic expression of the plant. And today we have Casey O'Neill with us from Happy Day Farms. Hey, Casey.
Hello there.
So yeah, let's start at the top. This term, terroir, again, I've been hearing it for just pretty recently now, the last couple of seasons. Where did this word come from and what does it mean?
So terroir is an old French word that describes all of the aspects that go into creating a finished product. Generally, it's associated with wine. Frenchy cannoli, the hashishin, has been, I think, instrumental in sort of making this transition in discussion from terroir as a wine concept to terroir as a cannabis concept. And I think it's an absolute fits like a glove kind of concept.
I first heard it from Frenchy myself. So what does it mean then? What is this terroir?
So for instance, in describing the terroir of this farm, Happy Day Farms, I would say that we have a south slope. We're located about 20 miles from the coast, which means that we get fairly cool nights. We have very hot days. We don't have much moisture. We are in a location in which because we're on the slope, we get these warm breezes that come caressing up the slope, and so there's a macro sort of climatic part of terroir, there's a microclimate part of terroir, and then there's a soil and cultivation techniques, and then genetics is sort of what I would consider the four overarching themes. And so for us,
what are these four overarching themes?
And so for us, the climate is it's very much a Mediterranean climate. Cool and wet in the winter and spring and late fall, but hot and dry for essentially the entire cultivation season from, May onwards through harvest. And
so we have climate.
Climate is a biggie. Microclimate, what are the interplays of sunlight and air movement and moisture content in the air on your specific spot? And so, climate affects the whole area, and then microclimate affects, for instance, a north slope is going to have a dramatically different microclimate than a south slope.
All right.
So, and then soil is a huge one. And this is one of the things that's really being debated in the cannabis industry right now, because, for instance, if soil is purchased, what type of terroir does that create, and how does that work? Traditionally, terroir is an expression of the native soil, and that for us is a big part of of really working to utilize the native soil that we have here. It was very poor, rocky clay. It was not good to start with, and we've spent a lot of time really building it and putting compost into it. So there's the initial factor of what did you start with, and then there's the question of what did you add to it. And so so that the soil, they say feed the soil feeds the plants, and so the soil is going to create certain genetic expressions. And so then, in looking at the genetics, first of all, what are the genetics you're using? And then how do they express themselves? And so for instance, most of what everything we do is seed stock. We start all our own seeds, we save our seeds. And so we've been acclimatizing these varietals to this location for the last several years. And so they are unique expressions of this time and place. And so our terroir would be, a combination of this south slope with this Mediterranean climate, with this specific soil profile, with these specific genetics. And then further, there's the question, so those are sort of the tangibles, and then there's the intangibles of who is doing the cultivation, what is their style of cultivation, how much are you cleaning out the plants, are you pulling them, are you tying them, how are you, what's your structure method.
And this is all part of the terroir.
I would say absolutely. And then also, what is the the mind state of the farmer? And this kind of goes into that question of can great cannabis be grown anywhere? And I would say the fundamental variable there is love. And it's about the love of the plant. And I think that there's a dramatically different expression that occurs when the farmer is in tune with, it's kind of the old hippie energetics thing where you're talking about this source of consciousness shift that's going on into the world. And, from as simple as, I was having a bad day, I smoked a joint, I felt a lot better.
Sure.
It's this sort of, this ripple effect. And so when you look at it from a production perspective, I think when you lose that love, I think you lose a certain part of the quality it's intangible but inestimable.
So what I'm hearing then is that terroir effectively it's the inputs that the plant gets from the region that it's being grown in, and how the plant ultimately expresses itself genetically.
Yep.
So we've touched on all the various inputs that make up terroir. If you had to put them in an order of importance, what's the most critical of these inputs to the end?
I think I would liken it to the concept of the food pyramid, in which, you're going to start with your basic climate, your slope and aspect, which way you're facing, whether it's north, south, east, west, what are the weather patterns, is sort of the building block. And then next is the soil. What are you working with in terms of soil? What are its components? What have you added to it? Then your genetics, because these are going to be both an expression of sort of the proclivity of the farmer if you've been working on these genetics and building them over time, but they're also going to be an expression of what the soil is capable of producing. And then sort of on top of that is this question of how is it grown? What is the scale, and how much attention is each plant getting from the farmer, and sort of that intangible, the question of love.
Yeah, just small batch cannabis grown with love.
Absolutely. Craft connoisseur production. It's, to me is extremely important. And it's this question of, as a farmer, I can only work on so many plants. And terroir is this expression of both the land, the climate, the plants, and the farmer. And so if I'm not able to provide the love and good energy to each of the plants, I think you end up with something missing.
So effectively, it's really all of these components coming together to truly create that special herb that we're all seeking.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, I think there's a lot of good cannabis out there. I don't think there's very much great cannabis. And I think terroir and the expression of all of those combinations is really what has the potential to create great cannabis.
I'd have to agree with that opinion. That was fantastic, Casey. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.